my friends. I'm Rick, and you're seat at the table, right? I was out working yesterday, working a lot, uh, pulled a 12-hour shift, and one of the things I was listening to was Daddy Rolls a One, and he did this video on top 10 favorite modules. And if you're new or of the younger generations, that's what we used to call the adventures and whatever y'all call them now. I mean, there's a couple different monikers, but back in the day they were called modules. And one of the reasons they were called modules is because they're designed ideally modular. So you would just plug and play them into your existing campaigns if you wish, or in some cases, like going back to the earlier days of where you would go through a sequence of modules that then potentially would lead to other modules. And of course, I will put a link to Daddy Rolls One, his video on this down below when I post this. And this is Thanksgiving of 2024, and it's early morning. Just had breakfast. I got a coworker and his spouse coming over. He's a friend, but he has no interest whatsoever in the hobby whatsoever. So I'm going to do a couple videos this morning. I hope to do some more on Saturday. Get a little ahead since I've got it kind of a screwball weekend. Anyway, modules were designed ideally to give you ready to run adventures. They also served another role, especially if you're new to the hobby, if you're just learning to be a game master. The modules are very important and actually probably serve you far better than if you try to sit down and create your own sandbox at the beginning. Learn to be a good game master. Learn what it takes to be compelling at the storytelling and to uh, uh, deal with all the stuff that comes with being a game master. Modules are your friend, and I highly, highly recommend them. So I started playing in 1974, 75. And I've done videos on this, so I try not go off into a 50-year decade. Fuck, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. Okay, so it really, I, God, I had so many of the modules that Daddy Rolls in One and the three other YouTubers that he got together to create their list, including Professor DM. And if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons at all, you probably have viewed some of his videos for sure. And as Daddy goes, I'm just a little drop in the bucket compared to him. And I was so, because he'd met the fella at a convention, they had dinner and discovered they had a lot in common. So once again, I kind of did a tongue in cheek and amusement because Daddy Roll One talking about, well, his channel's only been up and running for a very short time in comparison to my channel, for example, which is going on 9 years now. He has about 10,000 subscribers, and he's a drop in the bucket compared to Professor DM or who I'm talking about. Yeah, I'll put a link in his channel too, right? So. It's just kind of amusing. So he was, I'm just a little guy, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's so of a lot of us. And I've had a few conversations in the comments, very brief ones, with Daddy Rolls and Wine. Not as often as much as I like, but then it is what it is, and we are what we are. And somehow or another, I managed to bring two sets of glasses with me. Right, these are my newest ones, but ironically, they only do real good if I'm reading up close. And I don't know if that's just because I was having issues. They were trying to get my eyes to work, and I don't do well when people are throwing spotlights and crap in them. Anyway, anyhow, so I had the Giant series, and I had the S series, the B series, the D series. I had the U series. I had a UK series. I had probably 15, 20 the very early modules. Some of them actually are from basic and expert, and they did not translate over into advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I never thought about it until somebody they mentioned it in the video yesterday that I was watching. That made sense. That Gary Gygax and Arneson was the co-creators of the original Dungeons and Dragons. So when Gary Gygax invented Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, he wanted sole propriety. He didn't want to have to pay his partner, royalties. So there was some arguments going on behind the scenes that some of that older stuff was not going to be because he didn't want to give the other guy a piece of the pie, which I think is a load of BS. I don't think that's anything against Gary Gygax as a person, just as a business person and as a partner. He was an arrogant SOB, very nice person if you were in the hobby as a fan. But if you worked for him, the horror stories and there's a lot of bad stuff goes around the scenes, and in part why he ended up getting kicked to the curb is his own doing. But that's not here. That's not for this video. There's a whole lot of other videos. So I had a whole slew of these, and I wish I could pull one of them off the shelf, but I can't. And the two things came out of that. One was that by the time the first issues of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I'm in my early, 14-ish, 13, 14-ish age era bracket, and we were becoming much more accomplished at creating our own worlds. Myself and my friend Richie, and specifically me. I was more into creating my own sandbox long before the term was a thing, and less about the modules. I had learned the modules like everybody else, and that's why I understand as a new game master, those modules are extremely important. They really help you. They give you structure. They take the pressure off your shoulders until you're able to handle the pressure. That's the pure gem about ready to run adventures. Aside from the fact that they're literally ready to run, so you wanted to have a spot off, just impromptu game, you could pull one of these off the shelf, pull them out of your bag, bang, bang, bang. You don't have to do a lot of hard work. So of all the early stuff, they were all my favorite. Some more than others, some less than others. And I want to say it's S3 or S4, the one that you end up finding a crashed UFO. Yeah, basically a crashed UFO, and it has laser pistols in it. Has stuff in it. Now there's some caveats on it. Of course, the laser pistol only had so many shots, and there's no magic ever going to recharge that as far as we knew at the time. I did not connect the dots. I knew that Gamma World was deeply tied with Gary Gygax and TSR. Like I said, the very first game that I purchased personally was the Gamma World box set when the first year, second year was very early on and it came out. And then the connection to the two, I didn't see it, but what I did see was as time progressed with Dungeons and Dragons specifically, that the idea of planular travel is dimensional travel, time travel. All that is fun. All that is viable in the Dungeons and Dragons rule sets and settings, which opens the windows to all sorts of adventures. So your adventurers could literally find themselves in modern day New York, or in the future, or in an alternate fantasy in a galaxy far, far away. And only your imagination is what's needed to make the links. All right. But so we get into that. And later then, modules then take on a different thing. This is something nobody mentioned in their top 10, top 5 favorite modules. And I get that. Modules allow you to fill in the blanks. Now, not all systems work this way. D&D wasn't until later when second edition comes out and the introduction of Forgotten Realms as a setting, Forgotten Realms. And so Forgotten Realms starts putting out modules and supplements. And a lot of the modules that they were putting out were actually a bit more robust than just a mere module, right? And so what they were doing, if you really want to get a good view of what I'm talking about, you go to Iron Crown Enterprises Middle Earth role-playing game, right? So here's an example, Isengard. Every adventure, every module, every supplement is a piece of the bigger puzzle. So if you have your grand map of Middle Earth, we have the grand map of Middle Earth, and this is a specific location on that grand map in detail. And then the next one and the next one and the next one. So, we have Rohan that supplements this, and we have Dunland that supplements this. So you get the point that it helps build the sandbox and fill in the stuff. And at some point, I was having, I ended up, the only way I could ever run MERP was to use the D&D rules because nobody at my table wanted to learn a brand new system or an old system that they just like, I don't want to do, because the original MERP rules, you had to use a percentile die, which I'm a fan on, and not everybody is. So they all serve a role. For me, top 10 stuff. Well, I don't have top 10, and I'm not going to bog down this video. I could easily do that, but then I would just be calling up stuff. But what I want to take it just a slight different track than what they did in their videos. Okay, so obviously I have some of the oldest Dungeons and Dragons related material ever published by Judges Guild, right? So we have the City State of the World Emperor, and we have Tarantus, and we have City State of the Invincible Overlord. And there's 2 books for each one. And I've got videos on this. Somewhere in this channel, there are videos where I went through these. All right. What I love about these things is they're not exactly your atypical module by any means, but they are on a grand scale. Now, something that the fellow that does Daddy Rolls a Run, brings up every now and then, just resonates with me. This is why I know that me and Daddy Rolls and one fella would get along real well under most circumstances, as best I can tell on how I watch his videos, because we share a lot of passion for similar stuff. Some of the best role playing, some of the best theater of the mind that's ever happened at my tables were done in city settings, in city adventures, using these cities, these supplements. I still use these supplements to this day. If I have an adventure in a large city, unless somebody specifies something and we're talking a fantasy setting, booyah. Now, this translates real well to any game mechanic system, right? But the depth of options and opportunities here are boundless, endless, and left only up to your imagination. So easily, my top would be these. And some will argue, well, those aren't really modules. Maybe not. But if you look at a lot of adventures today, especially some of the new stuff that TSR or Wizards of the Coast put out for 5th edition, I mean, I've got one sitting up here somewhere that it turned out it was an adventure, and I didn't realize it until I was partway into it, and I realized, well, this is not a regional game supplement like I thought it was. This is just a full-on module, just really big, thick, robust, fancy one. So don't tell me that what defines a module it's a bit fluid today. So I've really found these to be extremely helpful. Even today, 50 years, these things were published before I started playing. It was in the early 80s that I found these, and Ivor's Dungeon, which was the old man who ran the only hobby game store at the time back in the 80s and early 90s, the 70s, 80s, early 90s in the greater Des Moines area. And he started out as a tabletop as a war gaming person, so he had lots and lots of that stuff going on in there. And then, of course, this just progressed to it. And Ivor went around to a number of conventions in the Midwest and set up a vendor table. And so when he knew I wanted these things, he started keeping an eye out for them. And if he could get them cheap, he would buy them and then sell them to me at slightly raised at rate. And the rest of this stuff that I got, all of these, and the massive collection of maps that goes with it. Once again, I did a video on those, and I pulled some of those maps out and showed you to them. You just have to go find the videos. He had these in a bin, in a box, a literal cardboard box, on the bottom under the display tables. So like in a storage kind of off to the side thing, like you would if you're not paying attention to them, you wouldn't notice. And he had 3 or 4 boxes down there, and he had a sign on it that said discount. So I bought these were already on their way out by the mid 80s. By 82, 83, these things he were, on the bottom shelf in the bargain bin then. So I was buying bargain bin stuff even then, right? And then, of course, like I said, we go into non D&D, and I'll get into Isengard specifically. I love Isengard for the setting, and much because not so much of the connection to Lord of the Rings and Saruman and Gandalf and things like that, but because it makes a perfect wizard's tower, an impromptu perfect wizard's tower. This thing I have tapped scores of times as a game master. I have played this scores of times as a game master. As a player, I have never played in Murph as a player, but I ran it many, many, many years. And so finding modules like that you can tap down the road for other stuff, just further shows you how much value there are in those modules, right? So go back to Dungeons and Dragons. So this is second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. By this time, Gary Gygax is no longer in control. He's been he's been bought out, outmaneuvered, and then packed off to Hollywood for some lame videos or lame movies and crap that didn't pan out for him, and basically sounded like he had a really good time while he was there. Anyway, what I loved about these sort of things, once again, this is a full run-on, ready-to-run module, kind of a mini campaign in some ways. So you can consider it as multiple modules. But it also covers a very interesting component of the setting for Forgotten Realms. But it also, try to find the utility here, is an awesome setting for any dwarven citadel, any dwarven adventure, any dwarven clan that you want to set and populate in your world. Boom, I can pull this, or I can pull Moria off of my shelf from Middle Earth, and bang, right? Ready to go. And like I said, lots of stuff, lots of fun things, lots of interesting stuff, lots of back in history, the maps that go with it, things like this. But the point I'm getting at is tapping them on a regular basis. So I tapped this one. I pulled this one off the shelf instead of Moria because I already had Isengard here. So I figured let's throw this out here because I've used this before too. And I ran a couple campaigns using this as the setting, and they went pretty well. I also have tapped this many, many times for concept ideas for settings dealing with dwarves and dwarven citadels and cities and so on and so forth, just like I tapped Moria for the same stuff. And had they done one for the Lonely Mountain, which I was always disappointed that I don't remember ever finding a module for Middle Earth MERP that covered the Lonely Mountain specifically. They hadn't got that far before the bankruptcy thing got in the way or whatever it was that put them out of business. Right. So I love that idea that your modules serve a purpose. They serve many purposes. The initial early days stuff, especially the older, the newer stuff, not so much. You have to be a little more selective as a new GM which ones you're picking, because like I said, there's some stuff, and I don't know that I have that one sitting here or not. Yeah, I do. There it is. I bought this back in the spring. No, that's Arms and Equipment Guide. Okay, somewhere around here is a one that's got to do with drow elves, and it's an adventure book about this thick for 5th edition. Obviously, this isn't it. And I got that because I thought it was a supplement expanding more on the dark elf realms. I'm kind of I've noticed in my lifetime when it comes to players, especially younger players, especially when I was younger, that sometimes people's tendencies, the role playing table is a good mirror for a lot of things. We can start to see a person's darker inner side or lighter inner side by the actions that their characters take on a regular basis. Think about that. Well, no, my character's doing what my character does to a certain extent, but there's still an extension of us, of you. All right. So I've always had this penchant for more of adult themes and darker themes. I've had tables run some pretty dark and twisted stuff. Everybody was okay. Everybody was in on it. It was part of the thing, and everybody had fun. There's still limits. There's always limits. Common sense dictates that, but social and morals also dictates that we have certain limits, certain caveats that we won't cross. But that said, the at some point in my life, I moved on from childish games. Now, what I mean by that is I started out as a child playing the hobby, playing the games, walking my way up the ladder of all of D&D. So I have been with D&D the entire ride until now. I cannot, in good faith, continue purchasing Wizards of the Coast products unless they show up in a bargain bin somewhere on a discount. I'm not purposely going to buy yet a brand new system. And that's just me personally. But the idea was that you can really expand using these modules, and they're suitable and necessary. If you want to be a new GM, for love of Pete, start with a module. Run a campaign out of a module. You will not regret doing so. Run several campaigns out of modules before you start creating your own. You use the modules as a template, as the starting point in your sandbox, and you customize things, you add new things, you change it up as you go. Hence, what you do is what most game masters learn to do, step by step. All right. So going on to the last pick I have. This one here is from West End Games, right? Tatooine Manhunt. I have ran this Tatooine Manhunt scores of times. This specific one I have ran. This is my original copy. It came out when the year it was published. It also has a Star Warrior scenario in it. I don't remember exactly what year. Let's see, 1988. So I would have been 21. 20? 21. I would have been 21. So I would have bought this, and I would have been working at a Domino's, I think, at that time as a manager. I bought this, and I ran it for almost every table of people who wanted to play Star Wars have started out at my table running with Tatooine Manhunt. I played it so many times that on a couple occasions when I was so literally bored and had no people to play, nobody at the table, kind of like I've been in the desert for a few years now, and ever since D&D Beyond got shut down or got bought up, and it won't I can't bring myself to go there and use it anymore. I've been trying to find another play-by-post platform, but I haven't tried very hard. The two I found are lame. All right, they're dead, and I ain't dragging people in there. That's what they want you to do, is find other people to come and join you. Well, great, and someday maybe that'll get their thing off the ground, but it ain't happening now. Anyway, this one here was a great starter. And when I started to come up with wanting to play a solo game, my first solo game was this. And I did my solo game as a journal. So I wrote a short story in essence, using this as the outline. That's how my solo game played out. And I chose one character as the player character role, and everybody else was non-player characters. And it was in my initial play of solo play for this that I started trying to experiment with creating systems that would allow the NPCs to make decisions without me. And I've talked about that because that's an integral part of my Interstellar Frontier system. And I've talked about it at other places and other stuff. So I'm not going to go off into a sidebar on that. So when we talk about modules in general and our favorites, I put this in the top 5 for sure, 100%. Just like I'll put Arnor from the Lord of the Rings from Middle-earth role-playing game. Arnor is my go-to for fantasy low-level play, right? Because it gives a wide enough sandbox, and it covers everything from the Shire to what's left of Arthur Dane and Agmar in the north, and so there's so rich an environment. Your campaign never has to wander far from that one book. I have ran a campaign that lasted in excess of 2 years, solely off of that setting, off of that one book, and it's the beautiful thing about it. So if I wanted to go back to the original stuff, Keep on the Borderlands was a grand starter. And I don't think that was the first module that we started with, my friend Richie and I. I cannot remember the name of the one his brother had that we kept borrowing, because it was from the original early stuff. And it predates the Red Basic box set. It comes from the White Book set. And I cannot for the love of Pete remember what that thing was now. And we learn from those, and Keep on the Borderlands is a great, as Daddy Rolls of One points out, and so does several others in the videos, it's a great starting point for both new players and new game masters. Remember, so many times people don't, the game systems and the hobby are quite progressively supporting new players to learn the hobby, learn to play and enjoy themselves. So we want them to come back to the table or go out and play at other people's tables. We want to give them a positive experience. And so they walk home with a good feel. We don't talk about the game masters, new game masters learning to try to do the same thing. They just don't get the love and support from the hobby, which is ironic because without the game master, you have no freaking hobby. Most of these game systems, these RPGs could never be played if you did not have somebody facilitating stuff. It's just kind of the way it goes. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope I hope you guys are, we're coming up onto another year, and I am struggling very hard to keep my feelings out of my videos. I don't have a lot of faith in what's coming. Unlike a lot of you, though, I've literally been to the pits of hell, literally, and walked away and walked out. So I know how far we can fall. I know how far we can fall, and I still got lucky. I got lucky because all of this, every bit of it, survived what I put our family through and what we had to go through. Most of this if you go to the first 2 years worth of videos while I was acting, we were living in the RV. Most of you have no freaking clue what it's like to literally be every day worried that your mobile home is going to die and you'll literally be homeless. We couldn't afford rent. We had to live in that RV in order to get this house. We couldn't do both. And how people can do that now, I had to go to extreme measures to get us in a position to buy our house. I could not do that today. And a lot of you have never had to deal with that. Never walked. And I'm grateful that you haven't. But we all have tragedy, we all have problems, and we all have issues. But some people's lives are far worse and far harder than others. And sometimes it's of their making, and sometimes it's circumstance. Is it my fault that I got a college education that nobody would hire me for? Was that my fault? Probably, somehow. Somebody always figure a way to point fingers at, you're your own problem. Really? No, every time I got in good with something, the company bailed or failed or collapsed or one thing after another, right? Until I was literally one step from being homeless. We were able to afford a storage locker. Like I said, if you go to the very early videos where I'm doing the various earliest stuff in that RV, as best I could under very trying circumstances. And most of this stuff sat 2 years in a storage locker that we were lucky enough to be able to pay for while we were, still saving money to get. Prior to that, they all got stored. Some of this stuff my mother had made damn sure got stored up in the house, and she was adamant. Thank God. I'm utterly grateful for that. The rest of it didn't. It got stuck out in the barn and it got destroyed mostly by the weather and then the gophers. You know, it's been a screwball path. My life's journey. No getting about it. Talk about Thanksgiving, and I want to end this on try to end this on a positive note. That's kind of hard for me since I'm a forever pessimist by circumstance. Yesterday I worked a 12-hour shift, and it was actually the 11 hours of it was very nice, very quiet, very peaceful. Everything went smooth. I got to William Penn University, and they're close. I could do my job and then have to fight my way through a bunch of people and listen to people cry. Then I went to the Science Center of Iowa. Once again, they were closed for the holidays and was able to do everything I needed to do. Bing, bang, boom. And then I get a phone call from the boss, and it's a customer crying about something that I have no control over. And then I spent the next hour trying to get a hold of this person and explain to them what the hell's going on. So I left him several messages and washed my hands of it and went home. All right. No matter how hard things get, there's always a possible future. There's always a silver lining somehow, somewhere. We can put ourselves in situations. I did a video. If you haven't posted it, it'll be posted later because I'm going to post this one this today after I get done shooting. It's going to be one I'm going to post, and because we're going to have our friends and going to go over in a couple hours, so I'll definitely post it before. It's my Thanksgiving video, right? Um, is that well? I showed you that when I wanted to play Magic the Gathering and I could not buy the material, the cards, I created them from scratch using templates that I found in a catalog. You just see that video when it comes out, just sheer amount of them I did by hand, and my associates did by hand, so we could play Magic the Gathering for a couple of years. It's the same mindset. That predated my beginning of my Interstellar Frontiers journey or saga. I realized that when I did my video on the cards. It's been 20 years since I started Interstellar Frontiers, and it's not finished. The game's finished, and I keep telling people, you want a free PDF of the crude beta version? I'm more than happy to give you one. Just send me an email, and the email's attached to the damn YouTube site. And be prepared for 4 to 5 emails back with big packets because that's how much stuff. There's three books, and then the what I've got of the current version that I would more than happy share. And my goal, hopefully in a few years, is to get a digital version. I'm slowly grinding my way through it. That's what I did part of yesterday. I spent a couple hours yesterday morning at the office working on that current chapter I'm working on, and with help, I'm getting some AI generated art. We're putting them in place. It's looking pretty nice. I'm now coming up on combat chapter, which is a challenge unto itself. Anyhow, no matter how bad things get, take a moment and pause and consider how bad they really could be. You could be homeless. You still might be. Some of you listening to these videos might go through that from one circumstance, reason, or another. Family comes and goes. When I was a kid, Thanksgiving was a huge thing. Just like Christmas was a huge thing. Probably Christmas was bigger because we would go to my grandparents' house in waves. My grandparents had 30 damn grandkids. I was just one of many. And so I had 6 aunts and their spouses. My mother had 6 siblings, and they were all married. And mom had 2 kids, and she was the smallest of the batch. My aunt Donna had 3, and she was the second smallest batch, as far as I know. Everybody was much higher than that, and we had huge gatherings. But over the years, as we've gotten older, my cousins have married and moved away. My high school friends have married and moved away. No longer in contact with them. Most of my aunt and uncles have passed away. My grandparents passed away. My parents have passed away. My wife's parents have passed away. So every year was a fewer faces and a fewer faces. So I'm still grateful. I'm grateful that I've had all those experiences. I also utterly furious at some of those experiences I had too, and they still screw with my head today, and I'm not going to go into that. The point I'm trying to make here is we engage in the hobby for fun, to find an escapism, to be creative. And for some people, this is their only creative outlets. Be positive with your friends and your associates and your family. Be thankful that you have them. Enjoy the time that you have with them. Time is fleeting. Till next time, I'm Rick, and I hope you guys have yourself a wonderful set of holidays. And let's all hope and pray and wish that next year's holidays will be